call the meeting to order. Well, we kind of did that earlier, and then we had to go to executive session. So we are back. So our first item, oh, and I should mention it's Monday, March 20th. Welcome to the MSAD 51 Board of Directors meeting. Okay, and moving on to, we have two number twos on the agenda. So number 2, recognition. So do we have the North Yarmouth Historical Society here? Yes, please. And you have a presentation for us, or?
Well, we weren't quite sure how this is going to work. We can.
Yeah, please step up. And
Here.
yes, please.
Do I dare touch it? Are we on?
Yes.
Okay. I'm Dixie Hayes from North Yarmouth Historical Society, and this is Kathy Bunton, who's also on the executive board. And you probably know, if you live in North Yarmouth or if you drive on Route 115, North Yarmouth Historical Society moved a building about a little over a year ago, a year and 3 months, and it's our 1853 town hall. And it got moved to the center of town because we felt strongly that that was the place where it would get the most attention and be used the most, and we thought it was a lovely addition for a historic town. So when the building got moved, which was on December 15th of last year, I jokingly made a comment because the building had been empty for a number of years except for a few little rodents. And every time I went in the building, I sort of panicked because I don't like mice very much. So cop movers, local Cumberland movers, came, cut the building in half. They were loading it onto the flatbeds to bring, and I jokingly said to one of the movers, "So you did get all the critters out, right?" And he said, "Yep, there are none left in there, but a few fell out." Well, if you know about the writing program for SAD 51, you know that most stories come from a little tiny seed. And there was something about that that just intrigued me, and I very casually said to a couple friends standing around, "You know, what a great picture book that would make. What a great kids book that would make." So in typical Dixie fashion, I procrastinated for a long time and didn't think too much about it. And finally, after several months went by, I just sat down and started writing. So I wrote the story and then thought, okay, well, I've written the story, but now what? Because we need an illustrator. And another SAD 51 former employee, Sue Kluke, whose art you've probably seen around, said, "Oh, I'm looking for a project." And the president of North Yarmouth Historical Society, Katie Murphy, is a graphic designer. And I have to tell you that this project just came together very, very quickly and easily, like it was meant to be. So the Townhouse Mouse was born. And an aside, I am no longer truly phobic about mice. I still don't like them, but somehow this helped. So we decided that we would publish the book and make some money for this project, which I'm sure you all understand, that you start out thinking that a project is going to cost $600,000, and then it's up to $800,000, and then it's pushing $1 million. Their communities and what the values of their communities are. So we decided that it would be really wonderful to put this book in classroom libraries. So we did. I called Jeff, and he was very gracious about it, and he thought it would be wonderful to put it in the pre-K through grade 5 classroom libraries, and we made that arrangement. And then I told him, and I remember him sort of laughing and saying, "Yeah, the way of the world," because I said, "So it's a little quid pro quo here. What I need from you is that you say something about this in your blog and give us a little more attention for this, because we're giving you the books, but we still have a lot left to sell. And by the way, you can get them from northyarmouthhistorical.org, or you can get them at the town office in North Yarmouth." I personally hope that this really is the beginning of what in my mind should have always been, but can be now, a much closer connection between the school district and North Yarmouth Historical and Cumberland Historical. You know, we have very valued primary documents, and I look at those IB kids and those kids doing senior projects and think, oh, wow, you know, this is as authentic as it gets. And I know from my personal teaching experience, the kids get really excited about the Civil War when they see the muskets and the hats and the badges and the canteens. And now that I'm not teaching all the time and busy all the time, I really have some time and energy, and other people do, to pour into projects between the school and historical society. And now that I'm old, I have really come to appreciate the value of cross-generational activities. I think they help everybody. We're all learners, and I think it's great for your kids from pre-K up to work with elderly people, and we will learn from them and they will learn from us. So this has been a wonderful project. If you don't have a copy of your own, then you should stop by at North Yarmouth Historical Society. And if your children, hopefully some of you have children who might have seen this in their classroom library already. So here's for history. Thank you.
That's fantastic. Thank you. Is it on Amazon yet, Dixie? Thank you. Okay, and that's in our libraries, right? So the kids can go pick it up. Very nice. Moving on to item number 3, approval of minutes. Do I hear a motion?
Motion to approve the minutes of March 6, 2023.
Thank you, Vanessa.
I'll
That was
second.
Vanessa, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Leanne. All right. Any amendments, edits, concerns, questions? I have one thought, Jeff. Is it possible that we can put the video link right in the document, so if somebody's seeing it online, they can click it and jump to the YouTube?
Yep.
Yep. Okay. Anything else? All in favor? Unanimous. All opposed. All abstaining. Okay. 1 abstention. Ann?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Motion carries. Moving on to, now we skipped number 4. Okay, I'm going to relabel these. All right, public comment is number 5. And so, if you would like to speak, please step up, introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Rachel Williams. I have to say, I am really touched by the fact that I know almost half the people in this room. I just wanted to come up and speak really briefly about ed tech contracts. I know this has been a big topic of conversation, and I think that our school board and our district is going to do the right thing and give these ed tech contracts and make things go the way they would. I did bring just a brief thing to read because I could ramble on about this topic for hours, and I know you guys all have better things to do than listen to me. Okay, so I actually have 4 kids in the district. Somebody mentioned earlier that I am getting older, considering my oldest is 21. She was a full IB student, twins who are 18, and a 13-year-old. This district has been extraordinarily supportive of all of my kids. And they're diverse. There's a lot going on with them. So I just want to point that out. One of my 18-year-olds has some pretty significant special needs, and I wanted to just share with everybody in this room how the ed techs in our district have changed her life in really extraordinary ways. They taught her to read. They've supported her in gaining all of her ADLs. They've shown her respect, and they've set an example for our community to show her and others respect. It made me think of that when Dixie said that we live in such a special community. And I think that our ed techs are actually on the front lines representing to the kids in the school how we treat everybody in the school. And I'm not sure if everybody in the room sort of knows what their job is. And I've just seen firsthand that they create a safe environment, especially for my daughter when she wasn't capable of being safe on her own, which was often. They've dealt with really significant behavior issues. I know you've kind of all heard about that, including escaping. I know we like to call it eloping, but really she was escaping. Lots of aggression, and they've always handled these situations with grace and tremendous skill. If I were them, I can't really imagine continuing to do this job if they didn't feel supported to serve our students in our district. It's just kind of hard for me to imagine that. These individuals provide extraordinary service to our school by doing what I think is actually the most dynamic job in our district, because they're constantly asked to do different things and different jobs, everything from change an 18-year-old's diaper to go ride the van with a 6-year-old who has aggression issues. It's a pretty wide spanning skill set. Lastly, the job that they do, it makes it possible for our classroom teachers to do their jobs. Without ed tech support, our typical students, just our regular, straight up, neurotypical, normal kid, will not be served in their classroom. Because if the teachers are focusing on what the ed techs are doing, then everybody loses. And I just think that's something I really hope that people understand, and we can start to support these ed techs the way that I think we all believe and know they should be supported. So thanks. And thanks to the 15 people at least in the room who have supported my kids over lots of years.
Thank you, Rachel. Is there others that would like to speak tonight? Okay. Seeing none, we shall move on to presentations for Sail Main. Is there somebody here to make that presentation?
Yep, David Shapiro is here to talk about that.
Good evening, everybody. Thanks for hearing us on our proposal to reinstate our students' ability to be part of Sail Main and represent Greeley High School. So, quick backstory. About 7-8 years ago, a group of students wanted to be recognized as Greeley representatives as part of the Sail Main program out of Portland. And by us sanctioning that program, it enabled them to really further their cause in their interests in what sailing had to offer. You needed to be a sanctioned school program in order to compete in certain regattas and get national recognitions and even some opportunities collegiately. The ability to sail would still exist even if they were not a really sanctioned activity, but some of their there were some limitations in what they could ultimately be able to do. And so we, this group, through the Athletic Advisory Board, which recommended their sanctioning, was sanctioned by the board, and that went very well, smooth sailing for a number of years until we hit some rocky seas. And we sent them a letter a few years back saying that we're going to, we're not going to continue our relationship as a Greeley entity simply because we had no oversight of the program. We did not get information in a timely fashion about who was coaching our students. That's really important. You know, if they were an issue, who's going to be responsible? And we couldn't be responsible not knowing what was going on over there. So sent them a formal letter saying we were going to sever our relationship. That did not mean our students couldn't continue to be part of Sail Main, but it just meant it wasn't a sanctioned activity on behalf of the district. Since then, several of them are here, so I commend. They just came off the water. I'm sure it was nice and warm out there. So clearly a dedicated bunch here. They have met with our athletic advisory board a few times now and pled their case to us, which really wasn't a hard one. And so long as they met our standard, we have interviewed. Coaches applied. We've interviewed the coach. I've sent the coach's information forward for approval with fingerprinting and this, that, and the other thing. So they have done all we have asked of them. Clearly, there's an interest here that we would be able to serve, and I think my job is to create as many opportunities as possible for our students to be engaged. The more you're engaged in activities outside of the classroom, physically active as this group will be, in a variety of conditions, there is a strong correlation between that activity and being able to do well in school. So the more opportunities that we have for our kids to be able to be engaged outside of the classroom is going to help them academically and bring some things back to us here. So the Athletic Advisory Board met again prior to this meeting tonight and officially recommends that they be reinstated as a sanctioned activity for MSAD 51. So that is where we stand, and we're looking for your approval.
Very good. Thank you, David.
Thank you.
I've been included on various emails, my time in this chair, and appreciate the parents that didn't give up and students that are interested, and I'm glad that hopefully in a little while here when we get to items for action, we'll be able to make you guys official again. Congratulations.
Yeah, is there a way to bring that out of order for this group since we have students sitting here waiting?
Sounds good to me.
Great.
So that item would be item 10C. If I hear a motion, I'm willing to do that.
I motion to approve the Sailing Club's proposal to recognize as a sanctioned athletic club at Greeley High School.
Thank you, Vanessa. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Anne. Further discussion?
I just wanted to add, since I've been on the board a number of years now and have heard Sail Maine and the desire to be reconnected officially with Greeley come up in conversation. So I'm just really excited for this to be happening.
Others? Okay. Go ahead,
Question,
Kim.
just since we're talking about the budget tonight and I've been steeped in that, I apologize, David, if you address this, but I see in the letter that there would be no participation fees. And so would that actually make it more accessible for students if it was a sanctioned sport?
Good question, and so everybody can hear my answer. So Sailman has their own, so we were going to waive the fee. We have a $75 participation fee. That would be waived because they already have to pay a fee to be part of Sailmain.
Okay.
But along with that, so there would be no financial obligation for us, other than I think it's about $150 we pay to register the team, I think it is. And they've done some fundraising already, so they have money on hand for pennies, some Greeley swag and whatnot. And like I said, the fee that they pay to Sailmain in the event, and I think this is important to know too, that Johnny or Susie doesn't have the funds to do so, they have their own scholarship opportunities there too. So anybody that does want to participate would be able to, without any financial
So a
burden.
student would have to pay the Sailmain fee?
That is correct.
But-
So they're not going to pay us. They'll pay they pay Sailmain, and in the event that they can't even afford that, then Sailmain has a scholarship opportunity.
Okay,
Does that answer your question?
I think so. Yes, I was just wondering if this made it more accessible to kids who wouldn't otherwise be able to afford.
Well, yes, we're not piling on, is what it would come down
Yeah.
to. So yes, the short answer.
Okay, thank you.
It also allows students to earn their varsity letter in participating when it's a sanctioned
Nope,
Greeley.
that's not
No,
true.
oops, sorry. That was my understanding.
I'm glad you said that, but no.
Not yet.
No,
And this would be for the high school? This high school only is?
correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
I
how
believe there are middle school opportunities. There are younger boats that are available, but for us, the sanctioning piece is for the high school.
for the high school? And approximately how many students do you know what your count might be?
We have 10 right now. There's 7 high schools, yep. Yep. And you need to have 4 in a boat to be a team? 2, I'm sorry, yes. So we have ample to field teams.
Okay.
And in the past, they've been working with other schools to fill a team. Anything else for the good of the cause?
Other questions, comments, concerns? And do any of the students want to speak before we take this highly contentious vote?
You're welcome to. Go ahead.
Okay.
I'll stand here with you if you want.
All right.
Okay.
All in favor? Opposed? Unanimous. Motion carries. Thank you. Congratulations, guys. Okay, so we'll move on to 6B, Superintendent's Report. Superintendent's recommended fiscal year 23-24 budget, please, rather.
Nobody wants to stay for the budget?
No one's.
Oh, I know how to clear a room. All right. Tonight I am very pleased to be able to provide a recommended fiscal year 24 budget for MSAD 51. And this is one of the more important presentations that I think I give anyway to the board annually because the budget is an incredibly important statement about our priorities in MSAD 51. It's a statement of our priorities, our beliefs, and our hopes are wrapped up many times, of course, in what we are able to financially offer the students of our district. Schools are more than just something to pay for, I believe very strongly, and I think most people would agree that they are something to invest in. Schools are far more than just something that is a price tag or a dollar sign. However, we also know that the realities are that's what it takes to make all of this a reality. And we thank both the communities, Cumberland and North Yarmouth, for financially supporting this district for decades now, as long as the SAD has been in place. So what's the value of the investment that we're talking about? MSAD 51 is consistently recognized for its academic, athletic, and arts accomplishments, and this has been going on for years. Greeley High School has been named the #1 high school in Maine now for 3 years in a row, and Greeley Middle School has been named the #1 middle school in Maine for 2 years in a row by U.S. News and World Report for its rigorous educational offerings and exemplary student performance. Our sports teams win multiple state and regional championship titles each year. Arts programs are recognized as some of the finest in New England and beyond. MSAD 51 is always at the very top of any list of high-performing school systems in the state of Maine. And your investment is not made in vain. You have much to be proud of. To celebrate our students' success is the same as celebrating your own success. Rangers lead the way now and always. Those are great words. They sound wonderful, but when you really put it right into the context of an everyday and all the students that we have, and you look at a student, you know that there's a huge investment in the students in this community. So these are not just empty words. So we're rooted in our mission, and the district's mission is to guide all students as they acquire enthusiasm for learning, assuming responsibility for their education, achieving academic excellence, and discovering and attaining their personal best. And I think personal best is always the phrase that I like the best in our mission statement. It is about all students and what is their personal best as an individual. And this budget is aligned to the district strategic plan, and you'll see this on many occasions as part of this presentation. Wellness, early childhood education, every student college and career ready, and skills for the 21st century, skills for life. Those are the 4 buckets of the strategic plan, and you'll see alignment throughout this budget presentation. So here's some fast facts, just in case you want to be reminded. We have 2,152 students right now. Actually, it's a little bit higher. It's around 2,169 students, I think, today. We've gained a few students. That number is October 1st, which is our state certified enrollment for the year. So that's the official number we have to use. We have 430 regular employees in the district, about 100 temporary employees beyond that, coaches, substitutes, et cetera. 2,660 parents and guardians, and if you're wondering why that number doesn't match up very well, if you're thinking 2 parents or 2 guardians, many have many kids, that's why. High school completion, this is a class of 2022, which is 96.2%. Again, class of 2022, 85% of the students went on to some sort of post-secondary education. 50% of our students are taking AP or IB courses of some kind in our high school. That's half our students. 12.5% of our students in the district are on an IEP, an individual education plan for special education. 10% of our students receive accommodations in 504, which is academic and health. And 65% of our students are participating in athletics at the high school and middle school level. Strategic priorities. So building a budget for a people organization is really, a lot of it is already built. The base is built. We have existing salaries and benefits. We have debt service, we have utilities, we've got operations, we've got kind of the nuts and bolts that keeps the district running from year to year. And then we have a small portion, which is the changing conditions. And for many years, the changing conditions has really been defined by enrollment in space in our district. This is a growing school district. It is a school district that has added just about 200 students now in the last 7 years, and will continue adding several hundred more by the end of this decade, according to projections. Strategic priorities is the other piece, that kind of the pinnacle piece of building a budget is what are those things that we want to prioritize and what do we want to add to the budget in order to make this district even better and move it to the next level from year to year. And that's based on the strategic plan. So changing conditions, looking at enrollment, obviously this is just a summary of everything we've been talking about with enrollment in space in our district, going all the way back to 1967, which is when the SAD was first formed. You can see that red line way over on the left-hand side, and it goes through ups and downs over the years. It reached a peak in 2001 and had a decline, has now rebounded, and is now on an incline again. And so SAD 51 has gone through this peaks and valleys for years, but the projected path for the next decade is that there is no valley, there's only a peak. So as our enrollment is going, we will surpass the 2001 mark. Mabel I. Wilson School, these are new priorities that were being recommended. I'm recommending tonight for the Wilson School for next year. The Wilson School has 765 students today, and we're projecting 779 students next year. That's Rebecca Wandell's projection. She's usually right. And anything with a check mark on all the slides I'm going to show you are aligned. These are aligned items to the strategic plan. I'll go through those pieces pretty briefly here. A lot of this is enrollment, especially at the Wilson School. We have another classroom teacher. We've been adding classroom teachers, 1 or 2 each year for about 7 years based on the enrollment. And so next year we're adding a teacher. The cost that you see in the right column, and I won't say this over and over, but I'll just do this for this slide, is all in. So that's the salary, the benefits for the position that we are looking at and we're budgeting. $250,000 to be in line with the short-term facilities plan, which is leasing a 12-room unit modular, which the board approved several weeks ago. Thank you for your approval of that. That allowed us to move forward with that 12-room lease, which will be in the budget. $87,000 for an MTSS coordinator, which is an RTI coordinator, which is now, we don't talk about RTI as much as we talk about multi-tiered systems of support for students, making sure that students are getting what they need, especially in the areas of reading and mathematics. Enrollment related, we have a 0.2 FTE. So when we say FTE, it's full-time equivalent. So we have a 20% position that we're looking at for art. And again, this is strictly enrollment. Music, PE, and library services, we're able to make that work with different scheduling, but with art, we just weren't able to. And each year we've had to add different FTE or pieces of FTEs in different areas to make the enrollment work. Science of reading, you've heard about science of reading, and that is something that the Wilson School is looking to invest $40,000 in materials and in training as well, but this is just for materials. Furniture lease for the new modular, again, this is connected to the new 12-unit modular. We need to have furniture. We can take some of the furniture from existing modulars, especially the 4 that we'll be discarding back to Schiavi. but we'll need a lot more furniture for the unit. A developmental specialist, which is already a position in our budget right now. It was not budgeted for, and anytime you see budget to actual, it means a position that we have gone ahead with, gotten board approval to hire that position, but we did not budget for it originally. So what we have to do is go back and then make sure it's in the budget for next year, so that it's accounted for. And when we have vacancies in positions, which we've had a lot of vacancies in ed tech positions this year, we go and we fill those positions when we can with vacant positions, or we dip into other pieces like contingency in order to pay for something like this. So this was a need that we felt was necessary this year, and we're just making sure we include it in next year's budget. And then permanent substitutes, I won't talk about this for each school, but in each school you'll see a piece of permanent substitutes. Again, not budgeted. These are budgeted, budget to actuals. We'd actually taken them out of the budget, if you remember, and then over the summer realized that we weren't going to get the daily subs that we need, and we put those back into the budget without having budgeted. So again, we're going to contingency and also daily subs. We have not had a lot of daily subs this year, so the money that we budgeted we ended up using for permanent substitutes, but we've had to make sure that we put that into the budget for next year. Same thing with lunch and recess aides. We have lunch and recess aides still. We did not budget for them, so these are budget to actual expenses. So at the Wilson School, I'm recommending $674,375 in new spending or new priorities, which is based on the list in front of you. Greeley Middle School, 4-5, currently has an enrollment of 322 students. Next year, we're projecting that there'll be 338 students. Again, that was Rebecca Wandell's projection. At the 4-5 school, right now we have a full-time behavior specialist RTI, response to intervention, or MTSS, that is at that's split between 4-5 and 6-8. We have a person that does both. It is a position that cannot be done grades 4 to 8 by one person. We have a fantastic person in the position. It has nothing to do with that. But it has a lot to do with, we have 2 different school schedules, and we have a lot of students in that school, and one position for RTI behavior in a growing area of RTI support that we're providing is not enough. And so that request came in to, you'll see this in Greeley Middle School 6-8 for a half-time behavior specialist. Between the two, there'll be another full-time position that we're recommending between 4 and 8. Next item is another classroom teacher. Again, this is enrollment related. The enrollment that we've been seeing at the Wilson School for 7 years has been slowly inching up now to the Greeley Middle School 4-5. Started a couple of years ago, and the enrollment is now increasing. And so we're asking for another teaching position at 4-5. Permanent substitutes and lunch aides, I already mentioned. And you'll see those at each school. So new priorities for 4-5, $176,875 for fiscal year 24 is being recommended. Greeley Middle School 6-8, there's 480 students currently in the school, and be about the same next year by projections. You will start seeing a large, sizable jump in 4-5, and then subsequently in 2 years in 6-8, and you'll start seeing those enrollment numbers rise pretty rapidly at both of the middle school levels. Again, the behavior teacher is the other half of that position I mentioned, and that's essentially giving both 4-5 and 6-8 a full-time RTI behavior teacher at those schools. A math curriculum replacement and license expiration every 6 years, or 6 years it's been since we've asked for money for a math license. Right now we have Connected Math at Greeley Middle School 6-8, and that license is come up for renewal, and the teachers and administration at 6-8 are reviewing their options, and so we're not sure how much exactly this math renewal will be, or if it's a different program, but this is kind of the mid-range of the math programs that are being reviewed right now. So we'll have more information for you in April. And again, the permanent substitutes is on there. So new spending or priorities at Greeley Middle School 6-8, $147,875 is being recommended. At Greeley High School, enrollment is 604 students today, projecting 588 students. And again, that's Rebecca Wandell's enrollment. And you'll notice with enrollment at the high school level, right now we have some of the smallest classes actually in the district right now. And if you look at Rebecca's report, we are going through the end phase of those small classes before the enrollment comes up. And Greeley High School, by the end of the decade, will be well over 700 students, which it was at one point. So at the high school, we're recommending for Broad Cove Academy, which is a program here at the high school which involves regular education, special education, and involves alternative education, students with an IEP. It's a combined service. And in that new approach, we're trying to support the students with some specialized programmatic teaching. So looking to increase the math teaching FTEs at the high school by 0.4 to support the Broad Cove Academy next year. NEASC is our accreditation. It's the accreditation for all high schools actually in New England. And every 5 years, the high school must complete a major report that is submitted to the NEASC Commission. NEASC looks at that report. They have a different approach now where they don't just come on site every 5 years. They work with you throughout the 5 years, but they still continue to have this major 5-year report that must be done. And your accreditation is mostly based on this final report every 5 years. And so we do, the $3,500 is to pay some of our staff to be here this summer and working on that report. Pathways silo projects. The silo projects are very popular at Greeley High School. This is actually more of a budget to actual. We've been spending money on students being able to complete these silo projects. I think right now we have 40 students as of right now that are involved in silo projects at the high school. These are independent projects that students can be involved in, and they get credit for doing that. That goes on their transcript. So $10,000 is the amount that we have been basically spending and have not budgeted, and it's been something where we've just had to catch up with that particular approach at the Pathways program. The next item is social-emotional learning. The high school has been looking very carefully at some programs, and they haven't completely made a decision yet, but we're putting a placeholder of $8,000 into the budget in order to support that. We did eliminate, and I just want to say this, we eliminated a $10,000 expense, I think a year ago, for Challenge Day when the pandemic was going on. Challenge Day does not, we've reached out to Challenge Day and they're not getting back to us. And I think a lot of their programming is kind of shut their doors for on-site programming to schools. So the high school started going in a different direction, and this $8,000 will be that placeholder for doing so. The next item is not necessarily a strategic priority, but I think it's very important to note. $48,000 for athletic coaches. Right now, these are coaching positions that are being paid for or have been paid for by our boosters. And we have been slowly trying to matriculate all of these costs into our budget over a long period of time. This is the last of the coaching positions, I believe, this is it, that we're aware of, that the boosters have been funding for years, maybe decades. This is a long time tradition. The boosters finally have said to us that during the 2 years or 3 years of a hiatus of fundraising because of the pandemic, they do not have the money to continue funding. They don't have the money in their coffers to continue paying for coaching positions. These are positions that we need. These are very important. The boosters should be thanked for all of their hard support and work, and they continue supporting in many other ways. They just can't support coaching positions. It's a huge ask. So we're putting this into the general fund and I believe this is it, for moving those coaching positions back in. And of course, permanent substitutes. So for the high school, the total spending priorities will be an additional $141,675. At the district level, we have a few items. The first one is $1,700 basically for paying some of our teachers to be on-site trainings. The state has increased the amount of trainings our staff have to have on a regular basis. Some of these trainings are annual, some of them are every 3 years, some every 5 years, but we have a growing list of trainings, and we need to pay our staff to train other people, which requires them to be doing this outside of their contractual hours. So that's the cost of doing that for next year. Alice, obviously, is our safety approach. As you know, there's an annual fee. We knew that right from the beginning. We factored it right in. $6,625 is our annual cost for being affiliated with Alice. A maintenance team member and a custodial team member are the next two items. They are strategic plan related because they're related to enrollment. And that's priority number 2, which is elementary education. So far, that's been where the growth has been. We have a lot more modular classrooms. We have a lot of items in the maintenance area that it takes a long time for our maintenance department to be able to get to those items because they don't have the staff and the resources to do that with a growing number of students and staff in our district and space. Same thing with custodial services. We are not keeping up with our space with the modular classrooms, and it's time for us to put another position into the budget in order for our classrooms to be clean. You'll see a 0 in the next item. Doesn't mean that we don't need a school bus, but we are going to try very hard, and our plan is to pay for the lease up front using current year funds so that we are not having to carry that cost forward into FY '24. The next item is special education. There are 10 positions, as you know, and thank you for the board's support on all of this in trying to provide a wraparound or clinical model, I always use those words, around special education, our functional life skills and behavior programs. We've been able to hire 10 different professional positions, social workers, speech language clinicians, we've hired a teacher in one case, OT, and these are valuable positions in order to really bolster those programs. So this is a budget to actual. We actually have 10 people in these positions, and we did not budget for those positions, as you know. So the net cost is $475,000. That does take into account vacant positions that we could not fill. We tried over and over again, as you know, in the fall, and we also moved to this model. This is a model that we had wanted to move to for many years, and it ended up being a year where we could do that. The next item is a doctoral psych intern. This is providing a lot more services in the psych area for what I consider to be a small cost for being able to do that. We have a PhD level psychologist in our district, and are very beneficial to have that position. This person will be supporting that position and being able to provide more services to our students. Next item is a 0. You'll see technology replacement cycle. We had really hundreds of thousands of dollars being requested, as is the case most years for technology. And you'll see a 0 here. We're going to try to pay off. We often lease purchase our technology, and we're going to try to pay off a lease purchase in FY '23 by the end of this school year in order to not put that as a cost in next year's budget. And the last item for district services is a 0.5 FTE school resource officer that's shared 50% with the town of Cumberland, so they pick up 50% of the cost like they do with our full-time position. This is an additional part-time position that would help cover Greeley Middle School and Mabel I. Wilson School, and that would be our cost, $29,000, and then again, Cumberland will cover the other 50% or a little bit more than 50%. So all told for district services, $650,373 is being recommended and requested at the district level. And we're looking at 2,183 students projected for next year in the district. So this is the budget development process that the Finance Committee went through with us. So starting in December, when the administrators submit their budgets to the district, we meet with the Finance Committee starting in January, and you'll see basically where the requests that came in were about $4.6 million. If you look at the green line, the yellow and the red lines basically identify yellow as areas that we were recommending but we were holding on, and red means the administration was not recommending those items at the time. And so there's a lot of items that you don't see in this presentation that never made it to this presentation because there was a prioritized way of looking at it. The Finance Committee did a good job of helping us, and we thank them for their work on helping us look at those priorities, rework those priorities in different ways. We're paying off some things in this year. We're lease purchasing other things. We're deferring items, and then we're just not going, and we're also, there's items that we're not going forward with. So you'll see between January, where we're at 4.6 million coming in, down to today's date, we're around just over 2 million in requests. I think it's 2.1 million in requests for additional priorities. Some of these priorities also, you'll see this in a moment, have been moved to capital. So they were moved out of the first request, and they're being moved to capital reserve. So there's a lot of reasons why these priorities went from 4.6 down to 2.1 million. And again, it's a matter of what were the highest and most important priorities going forward during the process. Just kind of give you a visual. So talking about expenditures, these are the cost center descriptors. The state of Maine requires school districts to budget and to allocate funds in 11, what they call the 11 lines of the budget. And so these are the cost centers. We do not use an other cost center. Some school districts do use one. That would be the 11th area, but we don't list it because we don't use it. These are the recommended budget line numbers, and I'm not going to obviously go through all of these, but in the 11 lines, or in 10 lines in our case, with regular education, we're up 8.15% over the current year, from the current budget year that we're in. Most of that is from salary and benefits, have been increasing enrollment, new positions, and just a growing school district for regular education. That's most of the increases that we've looked at. In special education, again, it's the budget to actual that I mentioned just a moment ago, in supporting our programs, FLS and behavior, along with salary and benefit increases. For CTE and PATHs, you'll see 0. It doesn't mean that we don't spend money on PATHs. The state of Maine changed the formula years ago, still include this line in the budget, but the state actually picks up the cost of PATHs for our students to go there off the top of the state budget. So we do not actually have to pay into PATHs directly like we did years ago. So that's why there's a 0. We have about 40 students who attend PATHs right now. For other instruction, the major increase there are the $48,000 in coach stipends. That's the biggest reason for that increase there. So we're up 13.31%. That's about half of the increase there, plus salary and benefits, salaries, excuse me, that go with that. Student and staff support, looking at those, we're paying off a tech lease early this year is what our plan is, and because of that, we're actually reducing that cost center by 0.78%. For system administration, most of the increase there, we have liability insurance, which is up. We have legal fees, which are up in that line, and then we have regular salary and benefit increases in that line. School administration is up again, salary and benefits, that's really the biggest reason there. Transportation, salary and benefits, plus there's some fuel costs. We have, fuel, as you know, has been variable, and depending on the bus runs that we've been running more and more, obviously our fuel costs are up. Facilities and maintenance, looking at really the 12.38% for facilities and maintenance, and I'm completely having a blank on what that increase was. Mr. Poulin, what is that?
Energy cost in the 2 positions in facilities.
Thank you, that's the biggest reason. And debt service, we're down a bit on debt service. We had a decrease. We also bring on the principal for the Mabel Wilson renovation, revolving renovation funds. But there's about a pretty much a net no increase, 0.65% decrease in debt service. So the total is 7.40 is the recommended increase to the FY24 budget. So in terms of spending by at the classroom level, our district has always spent more at the classroom level than the state average. State average is usually around 68, hovers around 68%. We'll have to see what it is this fiscal year. We're at around 71.9% for classroom expenses, so we're well above what the state spends on the classroom directly. Temporary space expenses, I think this is an important point to note. Between the general fund and capital reserves, we'll be spending just over $2 million on temporary space in FY24. Some of that is per the short-term facilities plan. $1,423,000 is from capital reserves to support the short-term facilities plan and the modular setup of the 12-room unit, removing the 2 smaller units, moving and rebuilding the playground at Mabel Wilson, and resurfacing the play areas and expanding the fence line. So that's all included in that $1.4 million, which you approved as part of the short-term facilities plan a few weeks ago, as well as furniture for Mabel Wilson School from the general fund. As I mentioned earlier, the general fund also, the lease does not come out of capital reserves. It has to come out of the general fund. That's $250,000. And again, that's an additional lease. And then we already have a $337,000 lease that is currently in the general fund. So if you add those together, what we currently pay, what we're going to be adding in the general fund, and then what we're recommending that gets transferred to capital from unallocated fund balance, we'll be spending $2,050,000 on temporary space in fiscal year 24. Again, different areas that money will be coming from, but that's your total cost. So unpacking the 24 budget increase, again, a 7.40% recommended increase in expenditures, 3.6% of that, which is the largest part of that increase, are existing salaries and benefits, debt service, utilities, operations, and I just put inflation, because I think that's really important. I think we all know there's a lot of inflated costs right now in a lot of areas. Of course, they affect those areas that I listed, but I think throughout the budget, you'll note that inflation is certainly a huge factor. So 3.6% are our fixed costs, what we consider fixed costs. Out of that 7.4%, 2.6% are strategic priorities, which I just went through. 2% of those, 2.6, academic and behavioral support, safety, 0.1%, and budget to actual, 0.5%, make up the 2.6%. And then at the top, 1.2% spending out of the general fund on changing conditions, enrollment, and space. That does not include the capital reserves that I mentioned as well. But that's just the general fund, enrollment and space related positions. So revenue and tax effect. So our revenue this year is up, which is good news. State subsidy is up just over $1 million in state subsidy. There's a lot of reasons for that. One of the bigger reasons is the enrollment increase in our district is certainly catching up with us, and we are able to, we get more money when we have more students. Shabig Island, the budgeted revenue for Shabig Island when they withdrew from the district years ago and from the town of Cumberland, we get subsidy from Shabig Island each year, and next year there's an adjusted amount going up. It's been going down, and now it's going up a little bit, and so we actually went up $6,723 for next year. And then miscellaneous revenue is going up about $10,000, and that's from anything that comes in that to the district for whatever purpose, whether it's using the Greeley Arts Center or those pieces, we consider miscellaneous revenue. So all told, we're up $1,020,000, $624.18, or 7.79% over the current year. So the estimated tax effect for the town of Cumberland is 4.57% over the current year, or 97 cents on the mill, which simply means that for every $100,000 of assessed property value of a home or property, it's $97 more per year. So you can just take that, whatever the value of your house is, or the tax assessed value of your house, not the market. There's a big difference. Whatever the town says your assessed property value is on your tax bill, that's the part you have to go by. It's $97 added to that for every 100,000 of assessed value, and that's in Cumberland. In North Yarmouth, we do not have the information yet. We should have that information for the board in April. North Yarmouth has a different timeline, and we should have that from the manager the next time that we publicly talk about the budget. For many of you, or probably for this community, this may seem like a larger tax increase or a larger expenditure increase than we've had in recent years. 7.4% is definitely the largest that I have presented in the 9 years I've been in this role. So it feels a little bit bigger than usual. We've had a lot of reasons why we've gone through that with inflation, with enrollment, in space, and being a growing school district. But you can look at the expenditure increases over the last several years. They've been very modest up to this point, and I still think 7.4 is a modest increase, especially when we're looking around at other school districts in our area that are at that percentage or higher at this point. And again, excuse me, the tax effect is 4.57. The tax effect is impacted greatly by the growth in both towns, and so we're hoping that North Yarmouth comes in somewhere in the neighborhood of the tax effect that we're thinking Cumberland will come in at as well. Another thing that we often do is look at the raw and adjusted per pupil cohort comparison. We compare ourselves to Yarmouth, Falmouth, and Cape Elizabeth. So if you look at the raw pupil costs, which is taking the gross budget that right now is recommended in each of those communities, and dividing by the number of students they currently have, you can look at the raw per pupil cost with no other factors considered. So we're at $21,860, Yarmouth's at $21,912, Falmouth's at $22,784. Cape Elizabeth, I think, presents their budget tomorrow night, so that's why we don't have their information yet. When you take out the revenue, though, this is the biggest picture, and this is the most important factor for our district, is when you take out the revenue we get, and most of it is state revenue, state subsidy, the tax assessment drops dramatically when you divide by the number of students. We're now the lowest per pupil cost, $15,298. $15,298. Yarmouth's at $17,646, and Falmouth's at $16,520. So we're the lowest, and I believe that year after year, we're lower than Cape Elizabeth as well. We'll have to check those numbers after they present the budget. So just going to give you an idea about the per pupil costs. Revenue for our district makes a huge difference, and we are a larger receiving district for state revenue than area districts around us. So for the next steps in the budget process, Monday, April 3rd at 6 o'clock in this room, there'll be a budget workshop. I don't know, we haven't decided if it's being filmed. We'll have to talk about that. If it's being televised, we haven't technically done that before, so we can talk that through. But it is a public meeting where the board will go through line by line in the budget and really look at all the ups and downs and looking at those cost centers, but also looking at individual account lines where that's the case. Monday, April 24th, a public hearing on the budget at 6 o'clock in this room. Monday, May 1st at 6 o'clock, the board votes to adopt either this recommended budget or a budget that the board has adjusted at that point. Thursday, May 18th at 7 o'clock is the district budget meeting in the Arts Center. This is a very important meeting. There are two parts of the voting process for the FY24 budget. The first one is the district budget meeting, and that's followed by the budget validation referendum, which is held on Tuesday, June 13th. So those are the next steps in the budget process. And that is the recommended high-level version of the budget for FY24.
Very good. Thank you, Jeff. So, questions from the board?
I have none.
Vanessa? No.
Is there a reason why we receive so much more revenue than Yarmouth or Falmouth?
There's a lot of factors that go. I could actually do a whole presentation on just why do we receive revenue that we do from the state. There's different reasons. One is value of your community. So they look at the value of both towns. Another one is enrollment and how quickly is your enrollment going. Ours has been increasing. Yarmouth's been increasing as well. But we've been increasing a lot more. Yarmouth is considered a low receiving state subsidy district in Maine. And they have their reasons why that's the case as well. So every district has an individual kind of profile with the state. But those are two of the biggest reasons. We also have student needs in our district. We get reimbursed for students that we have in our district for different needs that they have. And depending on that, we get either more or less money for those students.
Jeff, the total increase in the budget is a little over 3.2 million.
Right.
Did I see in the presentation that there's a total of 2 million that is associated just with portables in one way or the other?
Yeah, for expenses, sorry, Jared. Expenses, we have, if you look between the general fund and money that at this point is our recommendation for moving money from the unallocated fund balance to capital reserves, we'd be spending just over $2 million on temporary space. So if you look at unallocated fund balance that we currently have, moving money, we're recommending that we move 1.4 million from unallocated fund balance to capital reserves to help pay for the short-term facilities plan, which is approved. Then out of the general fund, the other costs, $40,000 for furniture, $250,000 for the 12-room modular lease, and then current annual temporary space is our current lease payment. So that wouldn't be additional, that $337,000. So this total of $2,050,000 is the current amount that is the amount that we're proposing that we spend on temporary space, all told, in FY24.
Okay, and so of that, about 1.7 is incremental?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
So without the need for all that temporary space, that increase of 7.4% would be more than cut in half. Am I thinking of that the right way?
So on the actual increase in the general fund, you mean?
Yeah, unless I'm
Yeah,
mixing
this is
apples
kind
and
of looking at
oranges.
all areas that we need to find money for temporary space, which is dipping into the unallocated fund balance, moving it to capital reserve. So that 7.4%, you kind of almost have to isolate that. That's general fund only increase.
Okay.
This is looking at temporary space. I almost debated whether I was going to put this slide in the presentation, but I wanted to show the board and the public how much money is being allocated to temporary space next year. General fund and from unallocated fund balance. So it requires moving money out of the fund balance into capital reserves to support the short-term facilities plan. So it's a combination of general fund money and capital reserves,
Okay,
if that makes sense.
yeah, thank you.
Is that 250 in that slide, Jeff? Is that what we moved into this year?
No, the 250 is the lease payment on the new 12-room unit. So that's additional money. That's new money.
Yeah, I think we may have made a mistake on that slide. We do not have the 250 included in the general fund. You and I had talked about it. I think we just hadn't moved it off the slide yet. That was a prepayment of the lease for the 12-room cluster. So that would not be part of the increase to the budget. That would be paid for out of this year's funds.
All right, we'll have to
Yeah,
work on
we'll
that,
just
get
correct
back
the
to you.
slide.
Yeah, we'll have to correct that slide
Yeah.
then. That's not where I remember us landing. Okay,
The punchline that we're spending $2 million on temporary.
we're spending $2 million on this.
That's the
But
punchline.
that still
punchline.
applies, yes.
Yeah, we were able to bring the budget down significantly by prepaying a lot of those items. Leases, the modulars, and several other pieces in order to be able to do that. And that's why I get the eye from the administrators, because we've also put a soft freeze on the budget this year on many expenditures, and to be able to do that, to not have to raise additional taxes next year.
Which I guess that's my only concern is because I know because of COVID and all of that, we've had a freeze on many requests from the building for a few years now, and how that's negatively impacting our students. So I think that's something that, you know, obviously everyone just needs to keep in mind too. That at some point we're going to have to make up for that.
That's true. We have been putting freezes on the budget for years, and we've needed those extra funds at the end of the year to pay off a lease or whatnot in order to help the budget in the next year. That's been something we've done for years.
Many of those expenditures, though, just so you know, Ann, the administrators will check in with our office, and if there's things that are directly related to student instruction, we approve them, and we expend on what's needed. So textbooks, supplies, any of those items that are needed,
Right.
we're in contact on that. So it's some of the other things in the budget where it may have some excess in a certain line, or other areas that we're just trying not to dip into those areas. But we're still supporting teaching and learning in the buildings.
Yeah, I didn't mean to
Yeah.
make it come off that way. Just more
I
sort of
just
like
wanted
thinking
people
in
to know,
terms of
so.
like, you know,
Yeah.
we want to be an innovative district, and that this is preventing us from making other changes
Yeah.
in the buildings that would bring great things.
I think the general thought process is a good one. We had discussions around that in finance a bit, that this year what we're seeing, a bit of a step up in a big budget, is the result of a little bit of maybe kicking the can down the road in past years and putting expenses off, and now we can't put them off as much. So we did have that discussion, and it's a valid point that you can only kick things down the road so long before you have to
I
pay.
think Jeff made the point on the positions, that many of those are enrollment related that we're dealing with. And so as we move into another fiscal year, maybe 2025, we'll take on those leases when we don't have to maybe add as many positions due to enrollment. So that was the idea behind that we had discussed.
And that was a perfect segue into my question, Scott. So thank you. Can you go forward to the next slide, the unpacking triangle? Thank you. So talking about the additional positions needed, which part of the triangle, because I was understanding a lot of those new positions may have been allocated to strategic priorities. Is that in the 2.6%, or are those accounted for in the 1.2%?
Yeah, there's a combination, Leanne, that are in the changing conditions. Some of them are changing conditions, just enrollment and space. Enrollment could be a classroom teacher as well. We included in that. Strategic priorities for academic and behavioral is more the RTI positions. The safety is the SRO, for example, is in there. And budget to actual is those items that were listed as budget to actual.
Okay. So the new classroom teachers are in the 1.2%?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
And I would just mention one other thing on the budget too. This is very early on in the process, so we've created a draft budget for this evening, but there'll still be moving pieces as we go forward. So you'll see, you know, for instance, the $250 on the lease, right? That's something that we'll adjust for, and then there'll be other things that come along, such as health insurance and retirements and other pieces that'll continue to adjust this budget one way or the other.
Because you haven't got the health insurance costs yet.
No, we don't have that number yet. So we have our experience rating, and but we don't have that number yet. So same thing with the retirements; those aren't due to us until April, and then we'll talk about those.
Okay.
One of the things that helped me wrap my head around this, Leanne, kind of to your point, besides that triangle, because I think that's a really good way of thinking of it, but when you look at those 5 screens that Jeff went through, the 4 different schools and then the district in general, those are all new expenses. And the spreadsheet that I kept working on, at least 80% of that is enrollment driven. Mm-hmm. And so that just, like, for me, really hit home, that we're not asking for much that's, you know, just new that we would ask for regardless, I guess, of our enrollment. 80% at least, and that might change with that 250,000. But I don't know. I don't know if that impacts anyone else the way it's impacted me, but I thought that was a really important way to look at it.
Others, thoughts, questions of Jeff?
I'd just like to thank Kim for one of the slides right here. Basically, she created, helped visually look at it. I think it's a helpful way of looking at the process that we go through to vet out priorities and look at different ways that we're going to make them work or not.
Others? Okay. Yeah, I'd like to thank the Finance Committee for all the work that they've put into this meeting a lot in the last couple months, and putting a ton of time into it, depending on how you want to look at it. And we started at like 16 to 18%. And we've made some hard decisions and got it back down to, you know, hopefully something that the community will support. And those trimmings may not be supported by you all as much, but we worked hard to try to make prudent decisions and prioritize things appropriately with Jeff and Scott's help, and I appreciate all the hard work that went in from the Finance Committee, so thank you. Okay, moving on to Superintendent's report, please, Jeff.
All right, the administrators are going to leave.
You can leave.
Because it's not 7 o'clock.
It's 8.
Like this, it's late.
I know, we're
A
looking
wave.
at a clock that has not been adjusted.
Hey, it's still early.
I know.
We have a lot of things great going on this over the last couple weeks.
Left a bottle.
Oh,
I think you left your water bottle. Yep.
What's that?
You might have recalled that the district received some science carts, state money, about a year ago, and we have several throughout the district at every school, and these were again given to us by the state of Maine, and we applied for them and were able to get those. So this is just an example of our 5th graders exploring the merge cubes, which I don't know much about merge cubes, but very interesting. It looks interesting. Again, these were from state-funded science carts. Congratulations to the Special Olympians who took part in the Winter Special Olympics for snowshoeing on March 9th. And just congrats to Adam Jacobson, Andrew Hall, Ethan Jensen, Allie Brooks, Peyton Brown, and Michael Johnson. Did a great job being out there in cold weather. IB Art Show is, I believe it's going on still. They've put together an art exhibition to present self-curated selection of resolved artworks from their 2 years in the course. And the selected pieces show their technical accomplishments, demonstrate their conceptual growth and understanding of their intentions. So they really have done some outstanding work. High school student graphic novel, sophomore, I can't say her name, is it Ayla? Ayla is in the process of writing her first graphic novel. We always have students every year that write a book, 2 or 3 that write a book in our district, and I'm always I'm absolutely amazed. We had a middle schooler a couple of years ago. We've had some high school students write books, and it's unbelievable to me that at that age that they're able to put that together. But this is part of an independent study silo course project, and Isla ended up visiting Island Port Press in Yarmouth, found out about the publishing world, and has put together a book, which is great. The all-district band and choral concerts were a hit this year. We had 300 singers, for example, at the all-district choral concert, grades 3 to 12. And just want to thank all of the music teachers and facilitators. We have conductors for the choral concert up here, but also like to thank the band teachers as well in the district for those concerts. This week is the showing of Little Shop of Horrors. The Greeley High School Drama Program is putting that on this Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. It should be a great show. I'm looking forward to it myself. So there's ticket information as well on the GCA website and on our website. There's information if you are interested in tickets. Lawrence Alexander is our consultant to the district, and he, on Thursday, I believe last Thursday, did an assembly with 6th, 7th, and 8th graders at GMS 6-8 and talked about being an upstander instead of being a bystander. This was all for all students in the school. He was so popular that he got lots of fist bumps on the way out. The kids really enjoyed having him there. 5th graders, as part of the science projects and with the kits, made some shadow clocks, just kind of showing you some more things that those kits were good for. One of the other pieces of projects from the silo projects that students at the high school have been involved in, this is a community partnership between the Shabig Island Land Trust and the Cumberland Land Trust. We had 3 seniors from the high school, Charlotte, Connor, and Lauren, who've been working on this independent study, really learning a lot about nonprofit management, land stewardship, local conservation, and working closely with these topics with those land trusts. Unified basketball games at the high school and middle school have been a hit. They're very crowded, draw a lot of visitors and spectators. I had a chance to go to the middle school and watch the unified game on Friday. Just a lot of cheering and excitement. I know this is a high school picture, but both schools, this is a really popular event. Again, this is part of the Pathways, showing you more and more projects that are going on in the Pathways program as we're getting closer to the end of the school year. A lot of these projects start to come to a conclusion, and so we've had a lot of information being sent out. We had another student at the high school, Adele, who's a senior at the high school, has been working on an expansive music and community project where she's learning about recording at the studio in Portland, working with a musician, Jonathan Balzano Brooks of Phantom Buffalo, on songwriting. Congratulations to the 6th grade math team. They were the first place winners of the recent Southern Maine Math League competition. Congratulations to all the students who have been involved. But Matthew Wilkerson was the winner of the individual award for 3rd place overall. Spirit Week at the high school was last week, and it's at the middle school this week. There's a ton of activities. All the classes were involved in those. I think the culminating piece was a spirit assembly on Thursday afternoon. And there's a picture there of, I guess I call it the zombie wrap. Kids wrapping each other up in toilet paper as part of the zombie wrap, and having each class competed against each other to do it in a particular time frame. And I can't remember which class ended up winning that one, but a lot of excitement for the high school last week during Spirit Week. And finally, the high school also hosted a blood drive. We had 46 donors. 39 of them were first-time donors, students, and altogether 45 units of blood were collected last week during the blood drive, which actually I think exceeded the goal that they had set. So congratulations to the students for that. It's a great and worthy event. That's the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Jeff. Questions from the board? Okay. Do we have any students pass out after?
Not that I know of. We know of any? No students that passed out?
Not that I
No,
know.
I was one of the ones that was spinning, and I fell to the ground twice, but
Really?
just like minor injuries, no head banging.
So you don't have to be 18 to donate blood now?
Oh,
You have to be 16 to donate blood.
16, okay.
yeah,
That has
you need
changed.
parent permission at 16. and
Okay.
17.
Good. Okay. All right, moving on. Thank you, Jeff. Committee reports. I realize it's a little repetitive. Vanessa, do you have anything you want to add?
No, I don't want to reiterate what Jeff went through, but I did want to thank Jeff and Scott, and they've left, but the district leadership team, the building administrators, Tom and Kim, we've met multiple times and really have honed down the budget. It wasn't an easy task. We started off at 18%, and now we landed we're at 7.4% on an increase, and it's already been stated why we think those increases happened. We haven't had big increases over the years. We've had enrollment increases over the years, and now I think it's just time that's kind of caught up to us. And obviously space. The next full board, the next meeting is with the full board, and we're going to comb through all of the budget and what Scott handed out, which is the 11 cost centers, I believe, at that time. Scott?
Yes.
Yes, okay. And then you guys are going to have more input on what you think we can do, if we can do anything different. And like Scott said, this is just the first presentation. They're still honing down. I mean, Scott gave me a call this morning and dropped it by another percentage after the work that Jeff and him did over the weekend. So, and then we do have a joint meeting with North Yarmouth and Cumberland, and I will apologize in advance. I will not be able to be there. It is on a Wednesday night, but that's on 4/12.
Okay. Very good.
And Tom, Kim, do you guys have anything you want to add for this first time budget process? No?
Just
Okay.
to reiterate that, thank you.
Yeah.
A lot of people worked hard on this.
They did. Yep.
Okay.
Thank you, Vanessa.
Moving on to policy. Jared, you want to take us through those briefly?
Yeah, before going into, there's 4 items up for first read tonight. Before going into those, you'll see under item 10, slated for later on tonight, there were 6 policies that have been through first read that were scheduled to go through second read tonight that you'll see crossed off on the agenda. Just so you know, what happened there was prior to bringing these to the board for first read, we had submitted sort of a clarification question to Drummond Woodsum. In the course of researching that question, they actually found that some of the language that had been recommended for the 6 policies on the agenda, the recommended language has since been updated, and they're now strongly recommending new language. And we only got this news late last week, and we thought it would be too rushed to try to show this again to the policy committee and then update the board on it. So those items were stricken from the agenda. They'll come back to the policy committee and then probably soon thereafter come back to the board for a new first read. Going back to the agenda for tonight. So there's 4 items on the policy agenda for first read. These are items that are being recommended to being removed as policies. And I want to just say big picture, what is the importance of removing policies? Because we looked at a number of them in the last couple of meetings. So we periodically ask Drummond Woodsum to review all of our policies to see if any of them are no longer needed, and then they pass that along to the policy committee to consider removing. As a general rule, it is best to only have a policy if it is serving a particular purpose, and any policies that we have are expected to be followed, and that can become challenging as more and more policies are added over time. And so for this reason, we should, as a general rule, be reviewing our policies periodically along with legal counsel to ensure that they are still serving a relevant purpose, or else generally they get recommended for deletion. So there were 4 policies that Drummond Woodsum had reviewed and determined they were no longer needed, and the administration also did not see a particular need for them. And so the policy committee in each case voted unanimously to present them to the board for first read to have them removed as policies. The first one is policy AB, community, staff, and student involvement in decision-making and communication with the public. I'll do my best to try to summarize why these are being removed, and I'll ask Jeff to step in if there's any questions that I can't answer. So for this policy AB, Drummond Woodsum just noted that policy was no longer needed. The committee discussed the redundancy of the policy, in particular that policy BEHD is cross-referenced and has recently been updated in 2020 and is more comprehensive with its language of public participation, and therefore policy AB was no longer needed. The committee agreed unanimously to move it to first read for deletion. I'll take any questions on that, or I'll keep going. So the next item on the agenda for recommended deletion was policy JO, employment of students. Going back to my notes here. In addition to Drummond Woodsum noting that the policy was no longer needed, Jeff noted that it was an outdated policy and that regulations, it was a policy in which regulations are changing frequently, and that if we kept it as a policy, the board would be frequently chasing updates. Fran mentioned in particular it was that the policy was governed by federal law, and so we did not need to have a policy for it. And Vanessa mentioned as a general rule that it always makes sense to default to the higher power authority, in this case being the federal government, and that the policy itself was not needed. The committee unanimously agreed to move it to first read for deletion. The next item was policy KFE, emergency use of school facilities. If I remember correctly, this is a very old policy dated back to 2000, and Jeff explained that it was just simply not a necessary policy, as the school is frequently opened up for use in emergency situations, and that the MSAD 51 emergency plan covers the use of facilities in greater detail than the paragraph for the policy. The committee unanimously agreed to move it to first read for deletion. And then finally, policy LDA, student, teachers, and internships. Drummond Woodsum had noted this was no longer a necessary policy. The committee agreed that the content of the policy was nothing that they felt needed to be kept as policy. Jeff explained that the school does have administrators review the necessary trainings annually. Vanessa mentioned it seemed to be more of an HR item than a policy item. The committee unanimously agreed to move it to first read for deletion. Are there any questions on any of those items?
Very good. Okay. Adjourn.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Kim.
Back to the first one, the community, staff, and student involvement. So given that you said that it was based on BEDH, I'm just a little confused because BEDH is very specific to board meetings. And since you made the point that, you know, if a policy is in place, we have to follow it. There are some in here that I feel like we're not doing. And so I'm just kind of curious what the discussion was between AB and BEDH.
Boy, thank you, Kim. No, I'm just kidding. I will have to dig a little bit to tell you the truth. It's just been a few weeks, and I read you the limits of the notes I had taken at the time. While I'm looking this up, Jeff, do you have any?
No, I
any
mean,
comments
Kim's
off-
right. I mean, BEDH is really specific to board meetings and public participation at a board meeting, but it is cross-referenced because it's public participation. And so the decision-making and communication to the public, it's really, we have another policy that around strategic planning that involves strategic planning and the community's input in relationship to that. And Drummond and Woodson, they have always told us if you don't have to have a policy, don't have it, just to have it. There's no reason for it. This policy's not even been updated since 1999. And we're going through the process of trying to go through these older policies. And if we don't need them, to delete them. We have practices that we follow. It doesn't mean you need an actual policy that tells you to do it. It's a practice that we have of communicating with the public. So it's just not a necessary, you don't need a policy if you have a practice.
Okay. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And just kidding, I appreciate the question and that you were actually paying attention, so thank you,
Read
Kim.
it to me.
Okay. Moving on to facilities. If I recall, I don't think we've had a meeting since our last meeting. Is that right?
That's
Ian?
correct.
Ian? Okay. All right. Anything you guys want to add? Mike is away. Okay. Curriculum, Tom?
We had a meeting last week. Thanks to Carol and Shannon and Janet from Greeley 4.5. They gave a great data-informed presentation on how they use iReady results to inform curriculum. So thank you to them. Our next meeting is April 10th, agenda TBD.
Thank you. Questions of Tom? Okay, thank you. Equity, Jared, anything to update?
I don't think we've had a meeting since our last equity meeting, or I'm sorry, since we haven't had an equity LSC meeting since the last board meeting. I'll just say that we've divided up the equity LSC committee into two subcommittees, and we've been working on our DEI plan pursuant to policy ACA. Half of the group looked at two sections, academics and programming, and policies and protocols and academics and programming. The other half of the group is looking at two areas, student leadership and family and community engagement. And we've sort of, for each of those four categories, we've listed priority areas, objectives, action steps, and a timeline, when and how often these would be done, and who's responsible for them. And tomorrow we'll be presenting, each half of the group will be presenting to the other and looking to button this up and present it to Jeff and Susie and get their feedback and hopefully be on track to present it to the board this year.
Thank you, Jared. Student reports.
You want me to go first? Yeah.
Well, over the past week, we have had Spirit Week, which has been really fun, and as was seen in the superintendent's report, there was the culminating assembly, but there was much more to Spirit Week than just the assembly. There were themes every day, such as Sweater Day, Outdoors Day, Crazy Sock Day, and then also there were activities during advisory each day, including a thrift store, a trash ball with socks, and then today we had recess, which was like just a bunch of different activities that you would imagine at like an elementary school recess, including Foursquare and different stuff like that. overall, I feel like Spirit Week always makes me feel like I really love the high school, and it's just like, I don't know, it evokes spirit throughout the school. And I think that was I definitely felt similarly this year as I did last year. And it was a great experience. And I really appreciated everyone putting in the work that they did. And I can't wait for another one next year.
Yeah. Yeah, Spirit Week was fun. I'm a pretty unspirited person, but it was nice to have a nice hour-and-a-half long advisory. So yeah, I really got nothing, so I'll rattle off some numbers. 54 days until May 3rd. That's when the seniors leave to do senior projects. 34 more days of classes. And then 76 days until until we go. What was the term I used the last meeting? Like evacuated. So yeah, that's it. That's all I got.
You're going to miss it when it's gone.
It's your last
That's what
Spirit
people keep
Week.
telling me.
All right, thank you, guys. All right, so moving on to ad hoc committees as needed.
I'll be meeting April 6th with the Parks and Recs.
Okay. Cool.
And we're going to be discussing multiple topics: Twin Brooks Playground, Valhalla Recreation updates, and living well.
Nice, thank you.
You're welcome.
And I just wanted to add that the Wellness Committee is at the early stages of reconvening to meet for this year to plan out where things are going to go for the rest of this year and really getting the work done next year.
Great.
I just want to give a shout out to the PTO because the next 2 months they've got a lot going on. So I'd encourage everybody to go to the website. Yeah, they offer some amazing things. So it's always good to just remind everybody of everything that's going on. I won't list it all, but PTO is very busy this spring. And then I just wanted to mention too that other committee is for the GCA, and I have just not had a lot of luck on being able to connect with Jennifer Fox. Obviously this week leading up to the play, it's not even an option, but I'm hoping that we can get some movement on and make some progress on the GCA. My biggest priority is just promoting the GCAs. Jason and I have talked about upgrading the website or updating the website so that the community can see everything that goes on all day, but just haven't been able to have that meeting yet.
Do you know if the play coming up is in that calendar, on the GCA calendar?
I doubt it, but I'll take a look.
Thank you, Kim. Others? Anybody else?
No, just that over the February break, we had North Yarmouth Academy rent the GCA from us for the week and do a play. So.
I was wondering about that. I knew they were coming in. That's good.
It was fun. I went one night.
Did you? Yeah.
Nice.
So another use by a neighbor of the GCA.
We're rich now?
Loaded.
Covers all of our budgetary needs for next year.
Solved it all.
NYA costs are going up.
I apologize for my pessimism. Yes, it is. It has been updated, and there is now a calendar on there showing at least some of the things. So
Great.
it has been updated.
Good. Anything else for ad hoc stuff? So on the new school, I had asked Leanne offered and to work with some folks that are offering their help on marketing and putting together some materials. Do you want to add anything to that, Leanne, at this point? A little premature, probably. And Tom is working on the survey as well with Jared's help, and I've seen that first iteration of the survey questions was fantastic. Much appreciated.
And because you brought up the new school, have we had any offers of land?
Jeff, please.
Well, we've definitely had somebody reach out, and we are reviewing that parcel of land right now.
Perfect.
And when are offers due? by?
I think by I want to say the end of the month.
Okay.
Might be might be the first week of April.
Okay.
And it's been advertised everywhere. I mean, it's out there.
I've seen it a lot.
Yeah, it's out there.
Good. But just one submission so far, officially?
That I am aware of, yes.
We've also had a number of inquiries.
But we've
as
only
well,
had
but
one
no
that's submitted.
submission.
Okay.
Yep.
And marketing plan on the school, Jeff. We're meeting with somebody tomorrow to maybe learn something. Anything else to add to that?
No, not at this time.
All right, anything else before we move on? Okay. Communications, number 9, anybody?
I just wanted to remind the community that if folks are interested in running for either our board, for Cumberland Town Council, or North Yarmouth Select Board, that there are seats available on all 3, and nomination papers must be returned by 6 p.m. Thursday, April 13th.
Very good, thank you, Ann. Others for communication? Okay. All right, so moving on to items for action. Item A, before we get to there, before we get to a motion, I'd like to have a little bit of a discussion around the calendar, and I had asked you guys to prepare your thoughts for this and potential changes. So I've reviewed the previous committee notes that I forwarded to you guys, as well as the parent survey that was taken at the time. That was in 2019. And assessing that info and coupled with the challenges coming out of COVID, I personally am in favor of reducing the early release days to prioritize instructional time. The survey question in particular that I found maybe most compelling was this one. It says, the calendar committee explored a variety of change options to the current early release calendar model. Which of the following viable options would you most prefer? So option 1 was keep the current early release model, but change the day to Fridays. So that was 41.5% of the respondents. Option 2 was reduce the overall number of early release Wednesdays, and that was 23.7% of the respondents. And then option 3, given these options, I'd rather just keep the current early release model as is, which was 34.5% of the respondents. So option 1 and option 2 were people that were looking for a change, and so that, to me, that was interesting. So I'd like to try to, my thought is to potentially limit the early release days to 2 per month on average, or a reduction of 6 over the course of the year, which would go from 24 to 18. And after reading the recent letter on the importance of attendance in our schools, which of course is, I agree with, and in-person instruction, I feel that this change is necessary and a good test. That doesn't have to be there forever, but makes sense. So with that, I'd like to hear from others on the same thought process of reducing those days a bit.
So you're thinking of just limiting your thought process, just having 2 half days a month?
I had to come up with something arbitrary, and it's a minor reduction, and I think it's a reasonable test, yeah.
I'll come back to my thought.
Others?
I mean, maybe we could go down the line. So I am not opposed to this. I feel like it's a hasty proposal. I looked at this presentation. I thought there are a lot of people who are involved in this for, I don't know, Jeff, how long did they?
I think it was 13 months.
They worked on this for 13 months, and they came to the decision to keep things the way that they were. For us to come in and just have a quick discussion at a meeting, it seems just too fast to me. I feel like it deserves some more deliberation. That's not to say that what you're proposing isn't the right thing. I just would like to have some more time to think about it.
Jeff and I talked about this, and we don't have to make a decision tonight. In fact, tabling this for another 2 weeks is still viable. I don't know if that helps.
And also, I feel like if we are going to move on this in the next 2 weeks, we should probably put it out there to the public so they could come and weigh in at one of our meetings.
Makes sense. Leanne?
I agree with that assessment. I'm very interested to hear, what the real impact on teachers and classrooms. And I mean, again, I agree that the proposal seems reasonable, like to reduce the number of days. I think having comparison information to what other districts are doing is really helpful. I think there could also be some value to think about when those days happen, when those days are reduced during the year versus the 2 a month. Maybe if we are reducing, does it make more sense to reduce towards the end of the year? Are they not maybe used in the same way as they are at the beginning? I just don't know, and I would love a way to gather some more information.
Yep.
Yeah, I was on the board when this was presented, and I recall just the amount of time and work that they put into it, and also then sort of, that feeling that they had put all this work into it and really tried to vet all these other options and came back saying, no, this is really what's the best for us right now. And I just wouldn't also want to make a decision in such a short time period. I think that we really, if anything, need to reconvene a different committee so that we can get the information, particularly I like, Leanne, what you mentioned in terms of how early releases are used during different parts of the year. And so if there are ways that we can better preserve that time for our staff to collaborate and do what they need to do. Yeah, I don't think I have anything else to say right now.
I guess ideally I'd like to hear from Jeff again on this. I just from some email traffic, I've picked up that there's a lot of value to the school from having the early release days, but I don't know if you've specifically weighed in on whether we could get by with fewer or not. I don't want to put you on the spot now, but that would certainly be helpful to know the administration's recommendation.
I would definitely be speaking for the leadership team, not just myself at this point, by saying that I don't think there's a lot of support for this. And I told Jason right up front I'd say this. Again, I think first of all it is pretty hasty. I think what Tom and Leanne had mentioned. I think it would be a really quick decision to make without studying this further. But the other piece, these early releases have become a way for us to further a lot of the priorities and the strategic plan that we have been working on for years and years, especially around response to intervention. I think we would have to really curtail a lot of the things that we're working on. And I don't have an answer yet. I'd have to talk to the leadership team more about it, what we would pull back on, because we use those early release times for those purposes. So there would definitely be, there's a balancing act between instructional time and teachers' ability to plan, like interventions, for example. I know at the elementary level, those Wednesday afternoons, many of them are used for looking at data and then planning interventions for students that need assistance in reading and math. The curriculum committee heard a presentation about that last week, and that is how they spend some of their time, for example. So I think we'd have to give you an assessment of what would be having to be put in the back seat, for example. If we didn't have 6 days, what would that mean? I really couldn't speak specifically to that. But I think it would be important to hear from the administrators as well as how do we use those days that we have each year. And we did a presentation, I can't remember, I think it was 2021 was the last time. And I was mentioning to Jason that I think it's probably time for us to do another presentation on how do we use these days so that there's more information for the board and for the public. How do we use these days? Because they're used very, in consideration of what they have. We value those days as a staff to get the work done.
That was an excellent presentation, I recall. It was just really enlightening to hear how much happens. Yeah, and it is certainly, it's a tough trade-off, because I mean, I understand where parents are coming from and wanting to make sure that, you know, their kids are getting as much face-to-face time with teachers as they can, but what would they potentially be losing by taking away this time?
Yeah, I think between that feedback and the fact that, you know, 75% of the survey respondents voted not to reduce the number of early release days, would make me want to, you know, similarly to Tom and Leanne, you know, study this a little bit more. I'd also like to know, are there other options that were not considered in the survey, such as, you know, adding 10 minutes a day to every day to get more learning time while not reducing the number of early release days. So I guess that's my initial thoughts, is to study it further.
Kim?
I have some thoughts. So first of all, I know that thinking back to being a mom, the consistency, like when you know that Wednesday's an early release day and it's almost like a pleasant surprise when it's not, you realize you have an afternoon to go grocery shopping or whatever. I know that I, as a parent, would really, it would be hard to go, okay, wait, which week is this? Is this an early release week or is it not? So just for consistency's sake, to have it be early release Wednesday, you know, that just be a thing. I think that parents would appreciate that. That's my opinion. I definitely feel that it should be Wednesday and not Friday, because I do think Friday will then become a day to take off, especially during the winter with skiing. It was one thing when it was remote and they could do school from Sugarloaf, but now I think it's much more effective to be Wednesday. And to the point about better attendance, that factors into that. But also, I know with my kids, sometimes that just knowing that it's an early release day actually gets them to school that day, because Wednesday's that hump day and they're just feeling like, oh, I need a little bit of a lower day or whatever. And if Wednesday's a full day, you know, I just can see like sometimes that actually gets them to school, knowing that it's an early release day. So that's just a thought about the attendance piece. And my last thought is that one of the things that I actually really liked when we were remote was that Wednesday being a day of catching up and getting additional instruction where there wasn't any new material being learned. And I'm sure that's a very controversial statement, and I wouldn't want to go back to it exactly the way it was. But what I would love to see is if Wednesday, since I know for a lot of teachers it's really tough to structure their instructional time on a shorter day, to possibly think about Wednesday being a day when maybe there is no new instruction. It's a time for getting caught up and just sort of making sure that everybody is on the same page. I don't know how that would work. This is just sort of something that's been stewing for me since the pandemic. And kind of along with that, because I know that, I mean, my heart does go out for families who aren't in a position to have their kids just go home. And it can be very expensive. So I would love to see some creativity around affordable options for those early release Wednesdays, like some sort of academy time where kids who need that extra help, maybe there are volunteers that day, or I don't know about ed techs, or maybe teachers who don't have to be in those meetings. Kids can stay at school and just work on getting caught up or getting that extra help. These are just sort of thoughts where we could be a little bit more creative with using those early release Wednesdays to really meet current needs. And I'm very much in favor of keeping them. So there you go. Those are my thoughts.
Students.
Yeah, I don't know what to say other than obviously students aren't gonna like this, but I don't know if that means anything.
I feel like early release Wednesdays are maybe less relevant to students when it gets to specifically high school, but I guess high school and maybe middle school. but because it's only an hour less, and really for high school, all that you're losing is advisory and then 5 minutes off each class, which like you don't really notice 5 minutes. But I think when it comes to the younger kids, I feel like definitely, I mean, I think the thing is high school students aren't losing that much, but I'm sure they're gaining a lot by the teachers being able to meet and like have those meetings and have that professional development. So I think that taking that away could result in maybe like, I don't know, just less opportunity for that and less opportunity for those teachers that have those meetings. Whereas in the younger grades, I don't have much insight onto that because I haven't been in the elementary schedule in a while. But I think with the high school, it wouldn't be the students that would necessarily, I mean, speaking from my own experience, be upset with going in, like having an extra hour of school. But I think that maybe the learning would be, like the level of learning might decrease to some extent.
I'd like to weigh in now. Quick question. Are the teachers there every Wednesday to the normal end of time, or do some just leave when early release leaves? Because it seems like it's more of a...
They're on a teacher schedule, so they are there for the duration.
So like if a student needed extra help, they could potentially...
Yeah, they're involved in professional learning activities, though. They're whether it's a team, they're with a team, their team, or they're with the entire staff. There's different, depending on the Wednesday, there's different activities. That's why I think the leadership team, I think, would welcome an opportunity to come and do a presentation on what exactly happens. But no, staff stay for the duration that they are always there. For the rest of their day does not change. It's just the student hours that change.
The other question is, how are other districts handling this? Because we are the only district that I know of that has consistent half-day Wednesdays throughout the year. Just, that could be something to look at from other districts. As a parent, I'd like my child to be in school as much, but I do like my half-day Wednesdays. I think I keep on reiterating that over and over again. But for a child that's not in a lot of school activities and sports, it kind of keeps that child still engaged on Wednesdays to be there at the school at the normal hours. And so I just, for parents, I think you would see that evaluation after COVID. I think you'd have much different results of this community on the half-day Wednesdays. I think that study was great, but I think if you did the same study now, it would pivot differently. And but I'm definitely in for looking at it again.
I was going to answer Vanessa for 1 second. So we did look at other districts at that time. I also know there's districts that are trying to get to what we have because they see the value in professional learning. And, you know, there's communities that are trying to add more time. Portland has an interesting model. I think they have 36 early releases, but theirs are shorter in duration. I think there's an hour.
Yeah, I think South Portland does the same thing. They have alternating Wednesdays or something like that.
Right. Yeah, there's different models.
Yep.
Yeah, and just to, Jeff, have you seen that other schools or communities provide additional support to families on those half-day situations? I think part of course, you know, having the kids in school for instructional time, I think is of most importance, but I think the lack of other options is also an issue. And I think if we are able as a community or as a district to address that, I think that we might get like different results from a survey if parents knew, okay, well, you know, we're still going to get those early release, but there's an affordable, you know, more equitable option for families who really don't have many options to cover that time.
That's a really good point. I think in other communities like Portland, South Portland, they've got, you know, the Boys and Girls Club, they've got the Y, they've got, you know, they've partnered with those organizations that are right there in the community. And so they have students that are going all different directions, plus their recreation program. Our rec department has done a great job collaborating with us. They just can't take all of the students that we have that might need it. I know the wait list on Wednesday is pretty extensive, although they've closed the gap as well on hiring more staff. But I think in other communities where there's more partners, I know they have partnered with other organizations to make those early release days that they have and full days where students can go. So they've
That's
done a lot
right.
of work around
Like
that.
on professional development days.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. So the Y already knows that. They've got a schedule. They've worked with the Y or the Boys and Girls Club to make sure those offerings are there. But we don't have those.
So in the minutes of those meetings that I forwarded to you guys, it talks about some of that stuff and how other districts handle this and getting their PD. That may be helpful for some to read through. I did reach out to a couple of members that were on that committee at the time, and one of them told me that, you know, the general consensus coming out of that at the end is that most felt that we should try to limit it to 18 to 20 days a year. So, you know, take that for what it's worth. But me personally, I'd like to have it be based on something. To me, you know, any day that isn't a parent-teacher conference essentially is by default an early release day, or if that week doesn't have a holiday in it, then it's an early release day. And it just seems kind of arbitrary to me that we just ended up with 24 days and we use them however. So I would like to know how those are used. Obviously, if you reduce the number of early release days too far, well, then that starts to cut into PD, and you would see a result from that that's not favorable. But the other end of that is you end up with more instruction time, which I think is favorable. And so I'd just like to know and understand what we're going to base that on and how we move that line. My belief is you could probably get away with less of these early release days, and that helps keep the kids in school, more instruction time. It probably helps some families that would rather have the kids in school than have to make accommodations. To Kim's point, I heard kind of the exact opposite on some early release days that aren't early release day, or there were kids that didn't get picked up because the parents didn't realize that it was an early release day. So that's sort of the backwards logic. The fail-safe, if you will, is if it's a full day, the kids are in school and the parents don't forget to pick them up.
Well, it'll be published on the calendar. It's not like it's going to shift throughout the year.
Yes, it's
like there's some Fridays that
Yep.
we don't have, like Monday before April break. I never remember if they're in school or the Friday before April break. I always have to look if they're in school or not.
I think we can make it clear. So ultimately, I think it comes down to where's that line for teacher professional development and instruction. And I think that the committee did a great job documenting what they did, and that I read the data a little bit different than what Jared did as far as concluding what percentage of people were willing to change or wanted to change. So I guess I'd like to see a straw vote. How many people would like to push it off a couple of weeks and collect more information, potentially ask Jeff to present more data, versus who would not? So I personally like to push it off a little bit and collect more data. Is there anybody else that would also like to push it off, or others want to just move forward?
I think that this is something that we should take more time on, and that would affect the 24-25 calendar, personally.
Okay.
I agree. I think even 2 weeks is too soon.
Okay.
Yeah, I have to say.
All right. So we will move forward with items for action. So is there a motion for 10A?
10A?
I move to approve the 2023-2024 school calendar as presented.
Thank you, Tom. Is there a second?
Sorry, would we be approving the calendar with those early release Wednesdays?
No, as presented, with all of them as presented by Jeff.
Okay, so then we wouldn't change it this year
It
at
got
all.
shut
Okay,
down.
all right. I
Correct.
just wanted to make sure that I heard that correctly. Then I'll second.
I said,
I'll take Ann's second. I think she was the first second. All right. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Ann. So I did have a little bit of further discussion on this concerning the asterisks. So like some of them have asterisks in them and some do not. Like December 7th, December 26th, February 14th, March 29th don't have the asterisk. So when do they get an asterisk and when do they not? As far as
So none of I don't know if you've got the very latest, but all of the holidays and cultural, religious and cultural holidays should not have an asterisk on the actual date. So those were removed. And what we did, and this is the only change we made since the last meeting, we changed the note on the bottom. It just says efforts will be made to not schedule events or major religious holidays that fall on school days. And we attached a list of all of the cultural and religious holidays.
so for instance, December 7th in the front page doesn't have an asterisk.
Right. We didn't asterisk any of those religious or cultural holidays.
But I thought we wanted like people just at a glance to be able to see, okay, this is where we should stay away from as far as doing field trips and that sort of thing.
So there was a suggestion that was made between the last meeting and this meeting to instead have a list of cultural and religious holidays and attach that or put this on the back of the calendar and have a notation at the bottom saying see attached list, which I thought made more sense. We have too many symbols in our calendar. We would have, a dozen more days with symbols. And what we're really trying to make sure, especially for our staff, is that they're aware of all of the cultural and religious holidays. They're spelled right out. And we're asking people just to observe those and not do something that is out of the norm of a typical school day on those religious and cultural holidays, if that makes sense.
Oh, sorry, I realized, Jason, thank you, because when I was pointing this to you, that I had confused myself, and since on the list it has asterisk. So I think then I was assuming when I was looking at the calendar, I didn't like cross-reference well, and so I thought that what was asterisk, like that some of them were also holidays. And I'm wondering if there's a way that we could change the list then, so that's not also using asterisks? I don't know.
Yeah, the list shouldn't have, you're right, they shouldn't have asterisks. It's because there's two notations at the bottom of that list.
Right.
And so they don't correlate with the calendar itself.
Right, and I made the mistake in my head that at first I was correlating it, so.
Yeah, they just correlate with those two notes at the bottom of the list.
Often with footnotes, they use numbers 1, 2, 3. If you need more than one asterisk, then different things mean different things.
We were trying to simplify, and hopefully we didn't make it more confusing. I mean, the asterisks that are in the actual calendar on the dates correspond with things that are in that box of the month that we're looking at.
Yeah.
So when you look at the list of holidays,
then you have an asterisk that only applies to that page.
That only applies to that page. That's right. That's right. I mean, we could just remove those notes and remove all the symbols and just have a list. That would make it easier.
Just do 1s and 2s. Just do footnotes that way. And then I think I personally like to see all of those holidays noted on the main calendar, because we had that happen this year where field trip was scheduled on Jewish holiday, and so
right, but we also didn't have this list either. We didn't have a list that was available. So
is there another color we could use for religious holidays?
Yes,
yeah,
I like that.
Yeah.
Or no more colors.
How about
there's going to be days. There's going to be days with multiple colors. Then it's going to be pretty.
Oh, that's right.
Challenging.
I feel like there's got to be a way.
What do teachers use? Do they use the Google Calendar, or are they using? I mean, this is nice, quick reference, but then. When teachers are scheduling field trips, are they looking at this, or are they looking at a Google Calendar?
And I have to say, this is more for staff, this list, more than anything, because it's just a reminder, so that's a good point. Graham, what do teachers usually look at? Are they looking at this?
Small sample size, but I would say teachers that I've seen mostly use that.
Okay. Which now has this list on the back, which hopefully will be helpful. because we're always saying, check check the holidays, well, here they are. Here's the ones to make sure that you're.
Could we instead add the holidays in the box of the month?
We did look at all that. We actually looked at putting a list at the bottom of the calendar, and nothing would have worked. It would have been a mess.
All right, I got something here.
Okay, all right.
A thicker border on the days where there's a holiday, so then it doesn't interfere with the color.
Oh, I like that.
But there's some signifier that there's a holiday.
Well, that's an interesting concept. Okay.
Tom,
interesting.
gold star. That's pretty good.
Is that a collegiate tool?
That is me closing my eyes at night and seeing Excel spreadsheets.
Okay, a thicker border on the days that we want to make sure. I would suggest keeping the list.
Yep.
Yes.
And
yes.
we can just we'll note them in some way if no one likes the asterisk and the other things, but we're trying to make sure we had all the information in there.
Yep.
Yeah,
Okay.
You could probably explain it in the existing footnote where it says, note efforts will be made not to schedule events on major religious holidays. At the beginning of that, you could say dates in a bold border, denote holidays listed on the following page.
You could just put the note in a full board, put a border around the note.
Oh boy.
You're way too complicated. Way too,
Anyway.
okay, formatting, but we'll make sure we include the, would that work? Graham, I'm gonna ask you, would you know that?
I actually think that would work nice if it was.
Okay.
They just want the one pager.
Yeah.
So they might not even ever have the back.
That's what I was
All
wondering,
right,
yeah.
so they know that there is some holiday. If they want to look at which one it is, they can look at the list. Okay.
Can we also
right.
still change the asterisks on page 2 to something else? 1s and 2s, footnotes or something?
Yes, we will definitely change those. They're
Start.
obviously confusing.
If people talk about calendar and they talk about asterisks, do you mean the asterisks on the first page or the asterisk on
Yeah,
the second?
we'll change that. Okay, so we'll make a change on those so they're more clear.
All right, how many board members does it take to build a calendar?
And there's all sorts of asterisks over by storm days too, just so.
Right, that's why we don't want to get too confused on all the asterisks that we have here.
There's also italics versus regular.
Oh boy.
Yeah, we used everything we can possibly use on the calendar to keep it as one page, as much of a one-page document as possible, but, okay, so noted. We will use, a thicker border. We'll call it the McGinnis solution on this.
All right, so we would approve the current calendar as presented with the following changes: bold border around the holiday days that are listed on page 2, and then changing on page 2 the symbols from an asterisk and a plus sign to like 1s and 2s or something.
Yes. Yes, we will.
Anything
we will
else?
make those changes.
Can I ask just an unrelated question? It won't involve borders and asterisks. So this is the first year, well, next year will be the first year that you're proposing to do the grade 9 orientation on that
Yes.
Wednesday before, which is great, having a rising 9th grader. Any concerns around only having one day of school for 10th to 12th graders before a 4-day weekend?
No, having 2 children have gone through that kind of schedule.
Okay.
They enjoyed it.
Okay.
The one day of school.
Okay.
It was not an issue, and I know the leadership team at the high school discussed this.
Great.
So, and they were okay with it.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Anything further? All right, so we're voting to approve the calendar as presented with the 3 amendments mentioned. All in favor?
Okay.
All right, unanimous, motion carries. Thank you. Okay, moving on. French exchange field trip request. Do I hear a motion for that?
I will move to approve the trip request for the French exchange field trip request as presented at our last meeting on March 6th.
Thank you, Kim. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Jared. Discussion. Questions? Anything to add, Jeff?
No, I have nothing to add, but just to note that there's a lot of material in here, obviously, about this particular trip. It's one that's been done before. Kim McDonald has taken students over here on many different occasions over to France, and I think it'll be an outstanding opportunity. I actually was going to say, Avery or Tommy, have you done this trip?
Yeah, I did it last year.
Okay, that's what I thought. Do you have anything you want to say about the trip?
It was a good time, and I imagine it will continue to be. Yeah.
The reason I wanted to be the one to make the motion is that my daughter did it, and it was one of the best things she has ever done, by far. So I would love to reinstate it.
I mean, Kim's been doing this trip for a long time, too, many years.
And it's a well-established trip, but as far as it relates to safety, do you have any concerns or anything that's changed in recent times?
No, none at all. I mean, I have to say, again, Kim McDonald has done this trip so many times. She's with the tour company. She's got the safety right down. She and I have talked about this different times over the years, and I have no questions at all.
I don't know about going in February, but I don't want to stir the pot. So.
February?
Yeah, that's when that's
right.
That's when it's been changed to.
When did you go, Avery?
April.
Yeah.
T-shirt weather. Just throwing out
Well, the weather is, the weather is the weather. Just either way.
Further discussion? Okay, all in favor? Unanimous, motion carries. Thank you. All right, so we did 10C earlier, and that brings us to 10D. Do I hear a motion?
I motion to approve deletion of policy IHD, student schedules and course loads as presented.
Thank you, Leanne. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Jared. Further discussion, comments, concerns, questions? Okay, all in favor? Unanimous, motion carries. Thank you. That brings us to number 11. Do I hear a motion?
I move to adjourn the meeting.
Thank you, Kim. Is there a second?
Second.
Take Vanessa. Thank you, Vanessa. Discussion. All in favor? Unanimous, motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, 9/11, it's early.
I know.
What else do you guys want to talk about?
Wow.
We have 3 executive sessions now.